Hello and welcome to Manifesting Marvel, a brand new podcast dedicated to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm your co-host Jacob,
I'm your co-host Raga.
and today we're discussing Loki episode 4, the Nexus Event. So we'll kick it off as we always do. What are your thoughts, my friend?
I think it's one of the best episodes I've seen in the series,
Yeah.
and I really enjoy the transition going from very slow, just Loki and Loki episode
Mm.
to kind of go into very fast pace, and a lot of things were happening, and I think I only watch it like one time, and I see a couple of memes and pictures.
Yeah.
I think I might have to kind of go back and rewatch the whole episode again to kind of get a bit more reason, because I was just looking for Easter eggs and stuff like that. So it's a very exciting episode.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with you. I think it's one of the best ones. I really liked episode 3 because as I raved about in last episode, I loved the Loki soundtrack and I loved that this moon was crashing into this planet and it was just epic. But I do have
Yeah,
to say, this episode had like the most kind of like twist and turns and stuff
yeah,
like that I don't think we were expecting. I think we were expecting it, but I think like the average like viewer
yeah.
might
I,
not have been
I was
expecting it.
expecting certain things, but not to the point where I would be like,
Yeah.
actually, I would see it, and actually, I would be like, oh wow, oh this happened.
Yeah.
What's now? What's going to be now? Like, because you will always see something like, okay, you know, I mean, for example, they show the timekeepers in the first few at the start of the episode, and you were
Yeah.
all get excited up, like, okay, I think they're only gonna show that, and that's it. We're not gonna see any more of the
You're
timekeepers
not going to
until
see
like
him.
maybe a bit. And then all of a sudden, it was very shocking when we actually get to see them, and the whole fight scene were happening inside the after the elevator. So it's very exciting, and I like to see what's going to happen in episode 5 and 6 now,
Yeah.
because I don't know how the storyline's gonna go.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. One thing I'd say is actually really cool about Marvel now is like their CGI is so good. You can tell when something in it isn't right, and like when you could see those Time Lords, you could
Yeah,
tell that something was up about them. Like they looked a little bit weird.
yeah.
It didn't look right, and like that is a testament to how good Marvel is at doing CGI because
Or
they were
maybe,
able to like do something that didn't look right as well, which is kind of cool.
maybe I think I seen one of the I think one of the WandaVision actors talking about, they were saying they had a budget for a movie, but they have for like 2 hour movie, but they have to make 6 hour episodes.
Yeah.
Maybe I thought on that second, I thought like maybe they actually under budget and they just made a bad CGI of
Yeah.
people, and I was like, because we seen them in the TV shows when they have these bad CGIs, like, not bad, I mean, like, there was something wrong with the CGI. You could
Yeah.
see them they didn't work on it really well, or was looked like rushed, but then it has the meaning to it at the end, so it makes sense now. I'm like, "Oh, wow, okay, they were not actually real."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, one of them looked like a green Lorax, and
yeah.
I couldn't understand really what they were saying because they sounded really weird. But it was cool. I enjoyed it. But we should probably talk about the beginning of the episode before we talk about the end. So
Yeah.
I think we'll kick it off straight off the bat with the opening scene. I really liked how they kicked this episode off with a little bit of backstory into Sylvie because obviously in episode 3 she mentioned that she was like took from Asgard and stuff, but we kind of didn't understand how. And it was really cool for them to like open it up with another Asgard shot. You're a big like film production when you can just like whap out the CGI for Asgard whenever
Yeah.
you need it here and there, especially in like a TV show. And like it was cool to see it from another angle too.
Yeah, I think it's evolved really well, like from Thor 1 to all the way. We've seen a really nice, cool shot of like aerial view of Asgard, like always popping up.
Mm.
And it's kind of nice to see it's a different story. It's about a different person, and then they give it a really different point of view, like a almost a backside of the Asgard and almost like a backstory to a different
Yeah.
person. And so it's kind of nice to see rather than a front or like a view of like a street or something like that. It's
Yeah.
really cool to see
No,
that.
I'd agree with you. And then obviously there was like that little nod when Sylvie's playing with the Valkyrie toy and she like swoops down to save Asgard. There's also a little toy wolf there, which is kind of like
Yeah.
a nod to Fenris, which was the giant one
I
from
mean,
Thor
from
Ragnarok.
the episode, yeah, from the episode 2, and we have this wolf keep coming up. I don't know whether it's gonna actually come into play. Maybe the episode 6 we might actually get to see the wolf. Actually, they're
Yeah.
using the wolf at some point, but it's quite nice to see that we seen it in Ragnarok. We didn't really know about what it is or what's to do with the Thor, and they kind of making it a little bit more relevant to us by keep having them in the scene or just reminding us, oh, this is actually exist. Because if you go back in any sort of Thor 1 and 2 or 3, 1 or 2, you don't see the wolf or you don't see it exist or
Yeah.
not much out there. But as soon as we start seeing them, we kind of kept keeping reminded by, oh, these things that exist
Yeah.
still or things out there.
Another thing as well to kind of point out is this version of Loki obviously hasn't seen the wolf because he grabbed the time cube tesseract and
Yeah,
dipped out after Avengers 1, so all of that hadn't happened, so he might not even know it like still
yeah,
exists. It could be a bit of a myth to him.
yeah. Because he talks about the wolf, but he doesn't actually know it's actually exist
Yeah,
or is
it's a
out
bit like a
there. So
folklore kind of thing.
yeah,
But
you might be surprised.
yeah, and another thing as well that I just want to quickly point out. I'm
Yeah,
very interested in this whole like why Sylvie was taken,
yeah. I
because it's made out. I'm not sure because I don't know if I could have just interpreted it wrong, but it's like making out that her very existence is kind of like something that's bad for whoever's running the TVA. Like her existence is just not good because what kind of Nexus event can you cause playing with two toys? And I think from what Sylvia said as well, she's kind of leaning on the idea that just because she was born a female Loki, that's the problem. Like that is the like that's it's pure chaos. Do you know what I mean? She's the goddess of mischief kind of thing. But I actually think what it is, which might sound even more crazy, but I have a feeling that like whoever's in charge, which we'll probably talk about in a little bit, but I'll quickly say now, Kang the Conqueror.
yeah,
Um, I have a feeling that he doesn't want like the female Loki being around because that female Loki in the Tom Hiddleston version of Loki, not necessarily that they get together or anything, but if they can work together, they can. That's
yeah,
like the only timeline that can bring it all down. And
yeah,
he's tried from like the start to try and stop that one because I think it would be too sexist for Marvel to go down the route that just because
yeah. I
she's
mean, like, if you
female,
want to see more, you're out.
they're pruning her kind of thing.
Yeah,
But I think there is something in it, and I don't think it's like their loving relationship. I think it's just like
yeah,
them working together because that's another thing too that I've seen online. Like it's got a lot of mixed reviews, hasn't it? Because like the previous episode, it was like Loki's bi, and then this episode, it's like, is he in love with himself? Is this gonna go down?
yeah. I mean, that's a low key thing. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't love yourself, who else gonna love you?
Well,
Like,
this
that's
is it.
just basically
Maybe
low key. You
Marvel,
love,
maybe Marvel's just coming out with like positive mental attitude, and it's like
yeah,
love
just love
yourself.
yourself. Yeah, like it's the other version of you, but you gotta love it. And but the thing is, like, it's very interesting to see. Like, yeah, we don't know the reason why she's been taken away, but yeah, there's something in play. But I feel like, yeah, they couldn't remove the current Loki from the timeline because I think it's quite will disturb the whole Infinity War and the whole thing. So they might have just removed her from the timeline, so they never get to meet each other.
Yeah.
And then when he actually took the Tesseract and disappeared, that's when he causes the Nexus event and kind of like, okay, now he's here, so we need to deal with him safely and get him out of there. They're not trying to meet each other,
Yeah.
kind of thing. But obviously, they didn't realize that if they get to know each other, might be the Nexus event. So
Yeah.
again, it's like a mismonitored by the TVA of some sort. If they knew that if they were together, the Nexus event will be the worst one. It's the spike that actually goes straight up rather than slowly increasing. So I think and the TVA is actually not realized that they shouldn't be meet each other, but they did,
Yeah. No,
or
I
some
do.
actually want to meet each other.
It's
Maybe.
just something's not sitting right with me with the TVA, man. I'm not buying it. Haven't bought it from the start, and I have a feeling it's Kang the Conqueror. It's got to be because like the next little bit that we got down here in our notes about
Yeah.
the hunter number being A23 when I
Yeah.
can never say her name properly, when she
Uh,
apprehends Kid
Ravana.
Sylvie. Yeah.
Ravana.
Yeah.
Ravana?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's following the Avengers issue 23, which is obviously the first time she
Yeah.
appears in the comics.
Yeah.
And as well, she's working for Kang the Conqueror. And they have a bit of a relationship too, don't they? And I'm feeling it. I don't know.
They
I'm
call
just
yeah,
feeling it.
yeah, they called it like Princess Ravana, but then in this one it's a Ravana Ryan Slayer. Yeah, they have a connection. I feel like he's already been cast, so I feel like he's gonna appear in the scene some point, or he's the one making it do certain things. Or maybe there's actually Time Lord exist and they were actually Android, but someone hacked into them and using them as for their own needs,
Yeah.
and that could be Ravana and the Kang the Conqueror will be in play because he used to be agent as well,
Yeah.
like analyst for the TVA. So I don't know what's going on, but it's look fishy. And
One one thing I will say is I did a bit of a deep dive today because I wanted to learn a little bit about Kang the Conqueror, and he is a distant descendant of Reed Richards from the Fantastic Four, and he's also of bloodline of Doctor Doom, and he's from the 31st century. If anybody doesn't know, and
34,
yeah, and I have a feeling, right,
yeah,
that I think you're kind of right, but where I think it's actually going to go, I don't think we'll see Kang like properly in
yeah,
Loki. I have a feeling we're gonna get like an Avengers kind of like Avengers one Thanos reveal, like he's gonna turn and smile at the camera at the end or something, or it's gonna
yeah,
like show him. But what I think we will get in Loki is like android versions of Kang or other versions of Kang that isn't like the Kang the Conqueror kind of thing, because obviously they can do this now with the multiverse. They can just grab whoever they want, multiple versions kind of thing.
yeah.
But one interesting thing that I didn't know about is he kind of gets, I can't remember if he gets banished to this place or if he gets sent to this place, but there's like a timeline that's in limbo and it exists outside of all of the timelines, but in the same kind of pocket area as the TVA.
Yeah.
And this is where like everybody bad kind of gets sent.
I
So
feel like that's the thing I'm thinking where the Loki ended up as well. I
yeah,
think that like everyone gets sent over there.
yeah. And
Any
the other thing
anytime,
is, oh, gone.
yeah. Go on, you finish
No,
first.
so the other thing I was going to quickly say about that is Mobius says in the second episode, we've pruned more Lokis than any other variant. So that would make sense. We obviously haven't seen, I thought we were going to get President Loki in this episode and we haven't. So that's
Yeah,
obviously still got to happen. And what I think is kind of play out, these are the two things I'm not sure about. I'm not sure about if this limbo timeline is either where everybody goes that gets pruned. So Mobius is there, Loki's there, everybody's there, or there's one for like your own self. So like this is Loki's limbo world where just Loki's get sent, and Mobius
yeah,
has been sent one for him. But one thing that I did find really interesting about the comics, and this is
yeah.
kind of where I was going to go next, um, you can't escape. There's no way of escaping limbo timeline. Once you're there, that's it. The only thing that you can do to stop yourself from being there is just dying. Like you can't get out. But we've seen in other trailers Loki walking through somewhere that looks a little bit old. And this
Yeah,
limbo world where Loki was in is New York. So is there a limbo version of the Sanctum Sanctorium? And
yeah,
he's gone in there to get help with Doctor Strange. So maybe he doesn't actually get out of this limbo place for the rest of the
yeah,
series. And it kind of goes more with Sylvie's character, and it kind of finishes him with like like going to Sanctum Sanctorium. The only flaw I have in that logic is he doesn't know where Sanctum Sanctorium is because this is the Loki from Avengers 1. He hasn't gone to there with Thor in Ragnarok or
yeah.
anything. But I've just knocked my mic. There you go.
Yeah, I think what you said about um all the Lokis were in the same place get sent to, I think quite interesting because they were because I think there's one of the trailers or the promos I've seen, the ship just like a warship just appear from nowhere into the
Yeah.
land. And I feel like every time they raise something or they prune something, they get sent to a place. And that's why they all go and ended up in. So that maybe when they raised the timeline of New York, that's where all the crash building and
Yeah,
everything
it's kind of like a
ended up.
Sakaar, but for the TVA. They
Yeah,
just dump
yeah,
everything there.
yeah, done by everything. So there's a Loki's, everyone ended up there, and then maybe different parts of the world that different people get sent out. I think Loki's kind of started with New York anyway, so then maybe that's why all the Lokis get sent to New York, kind of thing.
Hmm.
Want to rule the New York? Yeah, you go and ended up in New York and stay there,
Oh
kind
my,
of thing.
this
Yeah,
won't happen, but can you imagine, right?
yeah,
If when they take you from your timeline and they prune it, they don't
yeah,
actually prune it. They just destroy the timeline so it becomes a barren wasteland. Like they take
yeah.
you out of it and they destroy the timeline. And like
Could
when you get zapped, you get thrown back into your timeline, but it's gone.
yeah, it could be. I'm like, oh yeah, actually, yeah, I could have made it better, but you just killed everything and then throw
Yeah.
me back in there. Thanks.
But
So it's
what
very interesting to see that you go into the Sandroma as well. Like I like to see that maybe Doctor Strange popping up on it.
yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I think this pretty much well, I think we'll talk a bit more about the after credit scene in a minute.
Yeah,
But yeah, and then obviously the next bit in the episode, you've got Mobius and Hunter B looking for the Nexus event because they're trying to find what's the name, Sylvia and Loki. And at the
yeah,
top of the monitor, I just noticed this. It said Morag, which is where Peter Quill found the Power Stone, which I thought was a
oh,
cool
yeah,
little nod to Guardians of the Galaxy. But I like this scene because this points out something too. Does it? Because this is kind of what we were talking about too. So does two Lokis like
yeah,
caring about each other create the Nexus event, or is it wherever Sylvie goes, there's a Nexus event? Because she also
yeah.
says that too. Or is it this idea that I've kind of seen online that because two Lokis kind of like I don't know, it's kind of like hinted at that they fell in love or something. I don't know. There's like a moment.
It, yeah, it's like the Morbius in the interrogation or the theater, the time theater. He was telling him, "Oh, you totally in love with this person," kind of thing. I think maybe he's not actually in love with this person, but he's actually more like caring about
Mm,
this person. I think remember like we seen side of the Loki now and then with his mother, and I think towards his female companion, I think he feel like he actually cares about her.
yeah,
He cares about what she's been through, and obviously she tells him the story of like when she was younger, she's get taken away, and she never get to be in Asgard, and she never get to do these things, and maybe he feel a bit guilty that he get to enjoy all of these things in his life where she's been running since she was a kid,
yeah,
and he knows that's a long time as well because I think someone said about like it's around 1,000 years the Loki's around
yeah.
from the time he's been a kid to now, so it's a quite a lot of time. So
Mm,
maybe he's sympathizing with her or trying to help her out.
yeah. No,
Yeah,
I could totally see that happening. I think as well, like yeah, I know actually I'd agree with you. I don't I don't think it's going down the route that it's like a loving thing. I think it's
yeah,
going more down the route that it's just the fact that Loki's caring about someone and it just so happens to be that it's another Loki kind of thing. And that's maybe the
yeah,
Nexus event that Loki cares about someone kind of thing, like because
yeah,
that's not
maybe,
supposed to happen. Because Mobius says that too in the theater room. He says
yeah.
this is pure chaos and that's what causes a Nexus event.
I think each timeline only allowed to have one Loki. If you have two Lokis and they care about each other and they're working together, that's where things goes wrong. Because from now on, even though we say, oh, Lokis are working together, they trust each other. They weren't actually trusting each other. They were just playing by the ear until the fourth episodes arrived, where she's talk about her story because they think they're gonna die,
Yeah.
and you know, then now they start trusting, and then actually the real Loki actually like, oh, I actually trust you, kind of thing. So they will start working together, and that's what is causing the Nexus event to happen because we can have two Lokis in one timeline. And I think they will succeed.
Yeah, no, I agree with you because Loki says that famous line too, doesn't he? He's like,
Yeah,
A Loki never dies. We
yeah,
survive," kind of thing, whatever it is, which is really, really cool. And then obviously you get Mobius that like puts up those two little time portals, brings them back, and then starts talking to them like we were saying in the time theater and everything, and kind of realizes. And I think this is a good bit for Mobius because like he's starting to put all the pieces together. He's realizing, but he's not sure, and he doesn't know like what's real and what isn't real. And it's interesting because he's still playing like the hard cop, and then obviously he throws Loki in this time prison where Sif cuts his hair, which I thought was a pretty cool like little nod back to
Yeah,
Sif. And she seems to just show up in all of the TV shows. I mean, she's been in Agents of Shield and
yeah,
everything. I do
yeah,
think it was a missed opportunity to put Loki having just being slammed on the floor by Hulk for like 25
yeah,
minutes, because can you imagine if Loki just wakes up and then Hulk literally just grabs his feet, slams him, and then Loki's like, enough, and then he just keeps doing that. Like that would have been quite funny, and it would have been cool to bring Mark Ruffalo in, but I get
I
it.
think that would be yeah, I think that would be the best scene to put in. Um, like also Mark Ruffalo signed for to be appear in the She-Hulk TV series as well, so they could use the license
Yeah.
for
It
this.
would
I'll be like, "Oh, we're gonna use you for this one as well."
it would
It
have
would
been
be very
cool.
interesting. Or it could be they could just keep playing the same scene and add another Loki into it, or just CGI him into the
Mm.
current clock.
Or
So,
it would have been cool to get a Thor scene, like Thor throwing Loki like he did, in the elevator kind of thing.
yeah,
Just something like that where we get to see like one of the big Avengers, but it's not actually them. It's kind of like a time loop kind of thing. I think that would have been cool. And then obviously you get Mobius mentioning all of the types of variants that the TVA have
yeah,
encountered too, like the Kree, which have been obviously in Captain Marvel and Agents of Shield. And then we've had Titans, which is like the Eternals and
yeah.
Thanos' race. And then you've got the first mention of like actual vampires, which I thought was kind of interesting because I think they have announced a Blade movie. Have they got a date for that yet, or have they just announced it?
I think it's announced it, but I think it's 2022, I believe, the
Cool.
Blade. Well, maybe we might start seeing some promotion and material for this year, end of this year,
Mm.
but it's definitely coming out 2022.
But yeah, and then after that, you've got them in their office signing all the paperwork to kind of
Yeah,
finish the case. And this is interesting now. They've shown this pen again, that Franklin D. Roosevelt high school pen. So I
yeah,
wonder what the relevance is to that. I wonder if, because from what I've gathered, you don't age in the TVA.
yeah,
So how's that happened? Like, it's not going to be either of theirs because neither of them were in high school, unless Mobius was like a high school teacher or something.
yeah.
Can
It
you
could be
imagine something
something.
brutal like that? Like they're on a high school trip, right? Or
Yeah,
something like that. And there's an accident, but because Mobius saves someone, he like defers off the timeline and gets snatched out of his jet ski life or something. Like he actually does an act of good, but it
yeah,
causes a Nexus event kind of thing. I can totally see them going down that. But thought it was interesting because it's a high school pen. So
yeah.
who's that from and what's the
It could be a
relevance?
teacher. It could be a teacher just looking forward to summer vacations, just going
Yeah.
on his so
Yeah, he spends
uh,
all winter building it in his garage.
yeah, just fixing up the engine and but it's very interesting to see because like he kind of have a good look at that pen as well. It was like, oh, where's this from?
Yeah.
And then remember, like any sort of materials they have, he could actually trace it back to where the origin is.
Yeah.
So maybe that's how he's gonna find himself where he's actually from.
Mm.
Maybe he could chase that pen up to see like, oh, it's actually this is where I'm from because things that get given to um the lady, so Ravana. So she'd be like, maybe is one of the gift that he gave her when he solved the mystery or case.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And then obviously, if we flash forward a little bit, we get the great reveal of the Time Lords, and it all
Yeah,
kicks off. I don't know about you, but that's the one fight scene I actually kind
yeah,
of wanted to hurry up a little bit, not because it was slow, but because I was like, let's find out who they are. Let's have that
do
talk.
that.
I was like, I don't care about the Minutemen. Let's move past that. Let's see who these guys are, because they're just sitting there silently. But it's cool. It's interesting, and then obviously they Sylvie throws her sword at them, and it's revealed that they are androids to match what they looked like in that little cartoon that they had at the beginning, and to match all the
Yeah,
statues around the place. And that's kind of funny because it's a little kind of like nod to what Falcon said about the big three being androids,
yeah.
aliens, and wizards.
And also, it's interesting because when the Loki arrived in the first episode, they were like, "Are you Android?" And then you could see him going through this scanner, but we don't
Yeah,
see like floor of the scanner on this opening scene when the Sylvie kind of going through the scanner, you could see that scanner floor is being used.
Mm,
So that probably androids trying to come in and they'll just get, I don't know, sent to somewhere or whatever that happened, whatever they do. But I like to see like the androids that exist still, and then it still plays a huge part in it. Because I think when Falcon mentioned android, he's mentioned probably the Ultron
yeah,
and not and whatever he knows by obviously the by that's what we were thinking, but we were not thinking as android because there's at any point we never mentioned as Ultron as android in any of the movies
yeah,
until Falcon did it. So it was kind of a bit strange, but we were not thinking that further. Like, oh, actually, we might be able to get to see android in some point soon.
yeah. No, I'd I'd
May
I'd agree with you. If I'm honest, I have a feeling that like Kang the Conqueror's probably got a bit of a setup where he's created like kind of like an Ultron. It's not going to be Ultron, obviously, but like something similar to Ultron, which is like an android robot that's just running the show and it's
yeah,
like running the TVA for him, kind of thing. And he probably lives in his little Chronopolis pocket city in the quantum realm or something. And
yeah,
he's just having all of the Lokis picked from all of the timelines because for his like ultimate timeline, he needs Loki out of it, kind of thing. Because
yeah,
that's essentially what he does in the comics. He just goes through all the timelines, getting rid of people that don't suit the future, and just
yeah,
like taking all the versions of him and having like the Council of Kangs and doing it, which is awesome. Can I say, by the way, if I had time travel technology, I would have the Council of Carsons, and we would all
yeah,
sit there. My second name's Carson, by the way, if anybody doesn't know. And we would all sit there and it would be great. I would just send my bidding. I'd go and get all the Jacob Carsons from the different universes. And I'd be like, right, boys, what are we going to do?
yeah. Just make a little um parliamentary out of it.
Yeah.
I think. But it's interesting to see because, like, maybe that's what he was doing, trying to get rid of Loki, because Loki could be the reason that would, you know, if Thanos, for example, if Thanos knew that Ant-Man is could be the reason they could find the time travel and actually
Mm.
get rid of him, if you're able to kind of see that, he wouldn't be able to kind of get rid of um, um, the Ant-Man, but he actually couldn't see that because he was in the quantum realm. So maybe it is something that in a quantum realm, if Loki's exist, that's why Kang the Conqueror will
Yeah.
fail. Where you be like, okay, maybe I just get rid of all the Loki and manage the timeline and get people into it, like like kind of trying to control the whole timeline.
Can
But
I
it's
just,
interesting to see like how they're going to play this out because they got what maybe a couple more hours
yeah.
screen time.
No, I'd agree with you. Can I just say as well, I hope that they don't go down this route, but you know what Marvel are like, mixing up like what they do
Yeah,
from the comics and the films. Can you imagine if they go down the route that like Kang is actually, instead of being the descendant of Reed Richards or Doom, he's the descendant of Loki? And he's actually like, or he's the descendant of like, he's the child of the Lokis. Like they get together kind of thing to create him or something crazy like that. And he's picking out all the Lokis because he's trying to like stop it. Imagine if
could
just
be.
something bonkers like that, but it's probably not going to be something bonkers like that. But you never know. But
Yeah,
I agree with you, and I think what would even be like more crazy is if as the TVA is kind of like falling apart, Kang
yeah,
can't sort it because he's dealing with Ant-Man and the Wasp and Quantumania. Like that could be like a cool
yeah.
thing too.
But yeah, that's what I was thinking. I think I mentioned one of the podcasts. Like, it could be in a similar timeline because he's not in the TVA, so he might have created the android to kind of look after and do the things, so he don't have to be there
Yeah.
and able to just kind of go and sort these things out with Ant-Man in a Quantumania. So maybe that's why he's not here. Maybe that's why we might not be able to see him in Loki, but we might be able to get a little hint that where he is or what's happening actually.
Mate, I've just had like an insane
Yeah, I
brain
just saw you
thought.
go crazy there. I'm like, oh yeah,
Mate,
tell me, I'm ready for this.
you've just set me off on what you were just saying. Oh my
Yeah,
god, I think I've just figured it out. Right?
uh,
You know how we
yeah,
don't know why Sylvie
yeah,
was kidnapped? Maybe she wasn't. Maybe there was no Nexus level event. I was just sitting there thinking, yeah,
yeah,
that all makes sense with Kang, but how has he brainwashed everyone? they've played
Yeah.
too much on Sylvie's power to brainwash people and like change people's perceptions and stuff. What if they just took her from her timeline so he could build the deception of the TVA to everyone? Like
That exists.
she wasn't actually a Nexus level event. He just
Yeah.
took her to do that, to set it all up properly. I know like they show up and they take her, but like he could have had like a few people like working for him, and to have this big scale, because it's like you're saying, she's Asgardian, so this could be like thousands of years since she was a kid. And
Yeah.
like there might be something in that, like where she's not actually an Nexus level event. She was just kidnapped to be like used to help the
Brainwash.
TVA,
Yeah.
to brainwash everyone,
Could
because
be.
that would be good character development for her if she finds out in the next episode that she's responsible for all the Lokis being took out of their timelines because she brainwashed everyone in the TVA to hunt Lokis.
It could be. It could be that because I think that that is very possible. Like they could come into fire, like where Ravana kind of explained to her, look, by the way, we just made you do all these things, and then got rid of you, and you were still running around causing chaos. But
It could also be
um,
why she said, I don't remember, when Sylvie asked
yeah,
her in the elevator. Because she
yeah, it
genuinely
could
might
be
not.
that.
She could have been
It could
wiped.
be that. Like, yeah, she could be wiped actually. That's very interesting. I like to see that happening because that would be a really good thing. That really good like points that you will score,
And
and I'll be, yeah, you got that right.
they love doing the whole like it was Agatha all along, or like even
Yeah,
with the other one, like you think it's the new Captain America's the bad guy, but then it ends up being like these rogue super soldiers. So like this could be
yeah,
where it goes, kind of thing. Like we all think, because like we all thought it was Wonder, and then it wasn't. Like imagine, because we're all
yeah,
thinking it's Kong, and then it just Kang, and then it just turns out that like Sylvia, who's trying to find out who's responsible for it, is partly responsible for it. Like it is Kang,
yeah,
but Kang uses her for it, because that would be sick.
yeah. I mean, that will be. Yeah, I like to see that how that's gonna play out because she's been there for a long and she probably won't remember what actually happened when she was younger. She might have forgot or they might have used her power to do that, and then Kang might be able to kind of make her realize, look, that's not your
Yeah.
like I'll make you forget this as well. So you might have used her. That's a really good um point. I think I like to see that actually happening because I think we'll be very excited
If
when we watch the
yeah,
next episode.
if it turns out true, you best believe
Yeah,
everybody on social media, if you're not following at Manifesting Marvel, I will be tweeting all of the timestamps to where I said this before it happened, if it turns out to
yeah,
be true. But I can't
that would be
imagine
very
I'll be that lucky. But that is a very cool thing. But then obviously you get Renault, I can never say her name, Ravona.
rough
Ravona?
on.
Yeah, Ravona.
Mm.
Obviously like prunes Loki, and it's from behind, just like Loki did to Coulson in Avengers.
Yeah, that's just kind of, I think, like Loki would have just like hated that happening to him, but he wasn't expecting that to
And
take place.
he's kind of ready for it too. Like he's kind of just like, it's okay, and just goes, kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
he kind of,
it's so similar to how Vision disappears at the end too,
yeah,
with the
like someone
faces,
pointed
man.
out, and yeah, I think like there's something happening with things like maybe Vision is somewhere else in the world as well,
It's
another
quantum
version of
magic, mate. I'm telling you, it's
yeah.
something to do with the quantum realm,
There's
all of it.
something happening. I think someone just like the time travel in Endgame kind of brings so many things into it, and then they're just trying to figure out the mess. Maybe this is a mess, like a multiverse of madness, like actually happening right now.
Mm,
They know anything about it. We might think the timeline is actually one straight line, but it's not. It probably a lot of people controlling so many events, and
yeah.
know what's actually
Well,
happening.
so many different outcomes too. Like there'll be versions where the Avengers won or the villain won, kind of thing, and all those kind of things. But
Yeah,
one thing that
let
I find like
yeah,
super interesting about that
yeah,
is I wonder just like how far they're going to open up like the multiverse idea, because it's like you're saying, it could go like any magnitude of ways with all the different like characters and different versions and everything that they can do. And is it all going to be like in a straight line, or are we just going to have crazy loops now where they can explain different things? Because another thing I want to say to this Kang thing that you were mentioning, and we've kind of
yeah,
been talking about, it's not really been a discussion of episode 4. It's just been wild speculations for the end of the series.
yeah.
But
I mean, everyone, but everybody got to see the episode. I mean, you will never gonna miss anything that
yeah.
goes. So it's more of a yeah.
But one thing
I
I
think
will say is I don't actually think like I know this is obvious by now, but like I don't think the TVA are protecting like the sacred timeline. I think it is somebody with an agenda because they would have shown up and scooped
And get caught.
Glamora straight off planet Earth when in Endgame when she comes
Yeah,
from the past into the future because
yeah.
she just walks off at the end. She doesn't die like the rest of them. She survives.
Maybe she
The
get picked up.
TVA would have scooped her up, and the fact that they didn't, either Marvel hadn't planned for it yet in the writing, or
Mm.
because they don't care. They don't care if you jump timelines, and they don't care if you do anything like that. But somebody at the TVA has made all this propaganda and cares if you do things that affect his timeline or her timeline.
Maybe actually she might get picked up, and that's where the Peter Quill and the Guardians trying to get her back. They were
Mm,
traveling through TVA. Maybe they're the one going to be destroying the TVA
mm,
because they're like a good team to kind of go in and destroy the whole building and distractions and all that. So it could be that she might be a prisoner in somewhere. They might be using her to do some dirty work for them.
yeah.
So it could be interesting to see how they're gonna kind of get her back into the MCU. But let's talk about the post credit scene with four Lokis that you see at the end. What do you think about them? What's your first impression when you saw them? Like,
So as soon as you see it, I'm kind of like, oh my god, because this is just insane. This is kind of like all I ever wanted from Marvel, if that makes sense. Like growing up with the comics and you seeing all the different versions of these heroes, like I
yep,
never thought that would happen in like film because it's hard enough to have like a Loki series, do you know what I mean? Or like a Spider-Man film. And to think that like all these future films and like even in Loki to see them on screen, like multiple versions, like it was cool to get Lady Loki. And I still think towards the end, she's probably going to take on the name Enchantress. I just have a feeling. But it
yeah,
was cool to see that. But like to see multiple versions of Loki is really cool. And I actually think the scene that we're going to get with President Loki, I think all of the people in there are also going to be versions of Loki. But just awesome, man. From the credits, I think it said classic Loki, kid Loki, alligator Loki, and then bolster Loki, I think.
yeah,
And that's just they just look awesome. Do you know what I mean? The
yeah,
classic Loki looks like he's come straight out of a comic book. The
yeah,
kid Loki's interesting because it's kind of a nod to like the Young Avengers with Scarlet
yeah,
Witch's children that she had.
yeah,
And then the other Loki, the bolster Loki with like the hammer, who looked a bit like Thor with all of like the fur and everything. That's cool. I mean, it's dope to see like a
yeah.
massive,
He's got a hammer wielding it, so maybe he's worthy in that
yeah,
where he's from.
yeah. And then obviously the alligator Loki is just hilarious, and I'm gonna be making a petition to have him called Croaky, and he better,
Yeah, Croaky. Yeah,
yeah, he,
but I call him Croaky. That's actually a good name to be called Croaky.
yeah,
But it's very interesting because like there's no part about Alligator Loki anywhere on the comics or anywhere else until Loki episode 4.
yeah,
However, it may be some people just think that it may be as a twist to like the spider pig
yeah,
from the I think it's the multiverse. Yeah,
yeah,
the animated series. Yeah, I think it's
into the
quite nice
Spider
to
Verse
see.
or whatever it
Yeah, into
is.
the Spider Verse. Yeah, so I think it's kind of Spider Pig, kind of like the version of it. Maybe I like to see a little cartoon Loki as well popping up somewhere.
Mm,
Could be just going back into the days. But the one thing I noticed in the thing is that classic Loki,
yeah,
obviously classic Loki with the uniform that he's got on, is very true to the comic,
yeah,
but also it gave me a little bit of a Kick-Ass vibe. Like, in the Kick-Ass comic and
yeah,
it's more of a that
yeah,
kind of costume.
yeah.
It's quite nice to see that as well
Mm.
in color. Like,
No, I'd agree with you. I think this kind of counteracts what I was saying earlier about how I think this is going to end with maybe Loki not making his way back. But one cool way for this whole thing to finish, maybe in the finale, but it
yeah,
probably costs too much money to do. But it would be awesome if we got like an Avengers Endgame style fight. But it's just
yeah,
instead of Cap, it's Sylvie. All hope is lost. Doesn't look like she can win. And just an army of Loki variants just come
Yeah,
through all these different time doors, and it's just a battle of Lokis against whatever the villain is. But I don't think we're going to get that. I don't think there's going to be a big villain fight. I think there's going to be a reveal to who it is, but they don't
yeah.
know where he is or where she is in time, and they're just going to bring down the TVA. I don't think we're going to get like that satisfying battle at the end,
I
but I
I can
could be
see.
totally wrong.
Yeah, like I mean, Loki is up for season 2 as well, so I'm not
Yeah,
really sure. So they might not want to include that in the first season. They might actually want to bring that. Maybe something will happen in the season 2, but I assume that the episode 6 will set up what's going to happen with Spider-Man and Doctor Strange and other movies
and
coming because
Thor,
other
because you've
yeah,
got
and
like
Thor.
Jane Thor,
Yeah,
female Thor, and all that.
and then I think like the next movie that coming out is the Black Widow is not really connected to the MCU, and there was a talk about it's actually kind of happening when she was on the run
Yeah,
timeline period. So obviously it's not connected to anything. It's just that
it's a bit of fan
literally
service
dedicated,
to the
yeah,
character.
fan service to the character. But I think like that's needed. We needed that kind of storyline for her.
Yeah,
After all 10 years being in the MCU, not getting a single movie out of her, like it would be good to see her backstory and all that. But yeah, then after that, I think we're going to start seeing what's happening with the multi-universe and
mm,
things that are going to play out.
I agree with you. I wonder if
Yeah,
we'll ever see like multiple versions of more like conventional characters. Like I wonder in like Thor 4 if we'll see not just female Thor, but multiple versions of Thor,
yeah,
or like Hamdall, or like in Doctor Strange, are we going to get multiple versions of Doctor Strange?
yeah,
Or is Doctor Strange, can he just jump in another universe and pull Iron Man out of that one? Different version of Iron Man? Could we do the same with Steve Rogers and
yeah.
Thanos and all of them? Like, it just
It's
opens the door wide open. And I wonder if that's
yeah,
Kang's goal too. Because this was a theory that I saw on Reddit. I don't really vibe with it because it's already happened with Thor Ragnarok,
yeah,
but it was a cool thing to point out. And somebody was saying, what if this limbo timeline where people get pruned go, it's kind of a
yeah,
bit like a Sakaar where Kang sends all these variants and then all the
yeah,
variants have to fight each other to see which one's the supreme variant and they get allowed to go back to their timeline. And I was like, that's a cool idea, but I can't see them going down the gladiator route
yeah.
again.
Yeah, I don't think so. Like when you mentioned Gladiator and when you mentioned Thor, I had a thought about it. You know, in Thor, they were trying to say they're going to bring back the Beta Ray Bill
Yeah.
version of the Thor. So maybe he's actually from a different timeline and
Mm,
existed and ended up maybe through the um, wormholes into the Sakaar and he
yeah.
fought his way out, won his freedom and left.
Mm.
So as we can see, he's actually head on the one of the tall building that they had. So maybe it would be good to see different version of Thor where Beta Ray Bill exists actually.
Yeah, no, that's a very good
Yeah,
point. And actually, another thing to mention is when they're in Sakaar, the Grandmaster actually says time works differently here,
yeah.
which is the same as what they say in TVA. So maybe Sakaar could be like the dumpster bin for the
Or it
TVA.
could be. It could
Because
be
the Grandmaster could
could be
even
one
be
of the
like one of the people. Because do you know another thing as well? Those Time Lords, I know they weren't real. They were screaming to me like Watcher vibes from Guardians too. They looked
yeah,
like Watchers. I know they're not, but they just had like the massive heads, and they
yeah,
just reminded me of the Watchers a little bit. But maybe there's some in there too, because obviously as well, Loki wouldn't recognize any of it because of the thing. But one thing I will say as well is when they're showing that like bit, it might actually be from the promo 5 that they're like showing. But there's a Sphinx, isn't there?
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's
I think there
that's
was a car. Yeah,
yeah, and the Sphinx is what Kang the Conqueror's time spaceship looks like.
yeah. I mean,
It's little
the
nods.
the promo is like I think it will be very interesting to see what is happening in the episode 5 with like where is Loki is, where Morbius is, because the death of Morbius was just pure. Like I did not was so quick. Like I
Yeah,
think like I just guessed yeah he's gonna come back. Like nobody's gonna give that kind of character. everybody loving that character and everyone wanted to see him on a.
Mm,
I was a bit shocked when that happened. I was like, maybe, I mean, maybe they shouldn't have actually done that, like, because it's
yeah,
kind of made me feel like, he's not gonna die. Like, come on, Marvel, we know you. Nobody dies in Marvel. Like, nobody actually dies in Marvel. They
yeah.
always find a way to come back. So it's interesting to see what did this place they go to and what's happening in this place.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. But yeah, I think episode 4 was probably one of the best ones. And I'm
Yeah,
so excited for episode 5. I don't know if you saw as well, Disney announced that all Marvel series now are going to be on Wednesdays going forward, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if I preferred Fridays or Wednesdays, but
I think we prefer Wednesdays now because we do record on Thursday.
yeah,
So
it's much better. It doesn't eat into the
quite
weekend, so
funny. I think
it's
Marvel just was like, oh, boy, these guys got this podcast, so we have to release it on Wednesday now.
yeah, we got to suit them. But yeah,
Yeah,
so thank you everybody for listening to this week's episode. If we missed anything or you want to follow us on social media to keep up to date, because we post the coolest Marvel memes, I can promise you that.
yeah,
Follow us at Manifest Marvel on both Instagram and Twitter. And then if you want to drop us an email, it's
pod,
manifestingmarvelpodcast@gmail.com.
yeah.
And then if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Jacob E. Carson. And if you want to follow Raga on Twitter, it's at,
It's AJR Vendra.
there you go.
Yeah,
And yeah, if you're listening on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure you're following and give us a nice rating if it's Apple Podcasts. And yeah, we will catch you next week.